What's up, people? Hotep Jesus. We are back with another Sharpe conversation. Hope everyone's doing well. As you already know, this month, my channel is sponsored by Syscoin. Syscoin is the best of Bitcoin and Ethereum. It's got the security of Bitcoin and the flexibility of Ethereum. If you're a developer out there looking to develop on blockchain technology, Syscoin is something you probably need to check out. Ladies and gentlemen, Syscoin is our partner this month. Go check them out. If you were looking to speculate, try your hand at that as well. This is not financial advice. Shout out to the Men of Order squad. Make sure you guys go check out menoforder.com. I have a very important conversation for you today. Seems as if the Bolsheviks are quite busy. Our buddy Chad down in Louisiana set this up and told me there's a little bit of trouble down in the bayou. And this is Miss Jill Hines here. Jill, how are you?
I'm great, Brian. How are you doing?
I've been better.
Same.
But we're gonna get better. Just have a little back trouble.
Oh,
Yeah, it's all good. I was doing something I should have stretched beforehand, picking up boxes and stuff, but it's all good. So today, I spoke to you a few moments ago when you told me today was a bad day. What do you mean? Tell me about today.
well, first of all,
Okay.
I help run an organization that fights for an individual's right to determine what's best for themselves as far as medical interventions, best for themselves, best for their children. And so we're in the middle of our legislative session here in Louisiana. So I got up at the crack of dawn, literally left my house at 10 after 5 this morning because I have a 3.5-hour drive down to the Capitol. And we went to defend a couple of bills that were being heard in committee. And I'm trying to think, I think we had 2 successes today, but we had probably 5 or 6 bills in committee or on the floor. And our number one bill, our favorite bill, and we've been tracking 50 plus bills this legislative session that have to do with medical or health freedom or human rights. So we were tracking 50 plus bills. Our number one bill, our favorite bill, died on the House floor today in a vote 81-14. I mean, it didn't just die.
It got murdered.
It crashed and burned. And so I heard the news. I was driving home when I was listening to the session as I was driving home. And I heard the legislator that was carrying it, who is phenomenal. I think they're all intimidated by her because she's so incredibly intelligent and able to answer their questions just beautifully. I think they're really intimidated by her. But she handled herself well on the House floor, defended the bill beautifully, and they believed a lie. We're one of our biggest adversaries here in Louisiana when it comes to health freedom bills is a lobby called Louisiana Association of Business and Industry. And so they're fighting heavily for business owners. And we're fighting heavily for individuals for whom the legislature should be fighting for. And obviously lobby won out today. They were lobbying.
What's this lie they told?
They told, well, let me explain to you what the bill is, because
Okay.
it's a beautiful bill. Like I said, it was our favorite bill this legislative session out of about 50 that we were tracking. And it was one that we actually sought out a legislator for. I looked for the wording for this legislation. We approached this coming legislative session as we knew we needed to defend medical freedom, health freedom. We looked at it like the layers of an onion. We knew if one bill died, we had to have another one that would protect healthcare workers specifically. We're looking for healthcare, something to protect healthcare workers specifically, because they always seem to be left out in the cold. We could find a way to get an exemption or something like that, but it would always have an exception for healthcare workers. So we looked at it like the layering of an onion. We thought, okay, we'll have this protection here. This should fail. We'll have this other bill. And we did. We had several really good bills. And then the final protection on the top, it didn't have anything to do with, an employer had to, accept a particular type of or protect medical history or anything like that. We went for the product. We went for the product instead of the business owner or the individual. We just said, okay, the product in and of itself has a liability shield, right? COVID vaccines, you can't sue the manufacturer. You can't sue the administering physician or pharmacist or whatever. You can't sue the government. They're considered planners under the PrEP Act. So you can't sue the governor, Louisiana Department of Health. You can't sue any of these entities because they're covered under the PrEP Act as well. So we thought, okay, we'll just go after the product. You cannot mandate a product that has a liability shield that's been put in place by the government. We thought it's a no-brainer. If the consumer cannot sue for the injury that's incurred by the product, then you cannot mandate that product. I mean, doesn't that make sense?
Yeah, makes perfect sense.
It makes perfect sense. Well, and that's what, our argument has been from day one. Last year when they started mandating the COVID vaccines, we were like, well, the consumer can't sue for injury. They're going to be suing the employer that mandates the shot. They can't sue the manufacturer, the physician, whatever. Recourse has to be sought some way. And a free market, who's left holding the bag? It's going to be the employer. So we looked at it too as a protection for the employer. If they followed the recommendation or the law as this bill had it laid out, informed the consumer that's a liability-free product, offered an exemption basically, then they couldn't be sued. But if they forced the product on the individual, didn't inform them that it was a liability-free thing, discriminated against them if they refused to take the product, because it's not just vaccines that are indemnified under the PrEP Act. There's other products, mask in particular. You can't sue because they're under EUA. So that's another product that's has a liability shield. So we loved it from that perspective too, because it would protect, students from mask mandates, employees from mask mandates, but also the vaccination mandate. And LABI, which is how you pronounce Louisiana Association for Business and Industry, convinced the legislature that this is added litigation, that somehow employers, if they didn't follow through, that the employees would sue them. So our argument, again, starting bright and early tomorrow morning is, employees, if you are injured, if you're harmed by these vaccines or any of these products that are under EUA that have an indemnification, sue your employer, the one that's forcing you to do it under threat of job loss. Or if it's a student, if you're, threatened with loss of educational opportunities. We've talked to so many students that have lost scholarship opportunities because of COVID vaccination mandates within their scholarship program itself, couldn't go on international trips, lost opportunities to play with their band if they couldn't travel with them. And we have a fantastic exemption policy here in the state. The way I describe it is our exemption policy for students here in the state, law that's been in place for decades, is the best law in the country. We have a fantastic law, but still, even utilizing that law, students have been discriminated against. I can't tell you how many stories we've heard. Being a manager on an athletic team, they've been told that they couldn't travel with the team if they weren't vaccinated. So anyway, this was our favorite bill. It would have, it was the outside layer of our onion, and it was defeated today.
So I'm unclear as to what it is that they lied about. Because on one hand, I think you said they lied about, sue your employer, and you're telling them, well, yeah, sue your employer.
Yeah, we're telling them now that an employee can sue their employer because that's the only recourse left available to an employee who's forced to be mandated with a vaccine or whatever product it may be.
Okay.
LABI, Louisiana Association of Business and Industry, was saying that this was another kind of like a minefield for a business owner to go through. If they didn't follow through, if they didn't inform their employee that it is a liability-free product, if they didn't not discriminate against them. See, that's one of our biggest issues too, is, we have another great state law that says an adult does not have to follow through with any kind of medical procedure that they don't want to take, right? But there's no discriminatory actions in place with that law. So I can refuse medical treatment, but my employer, there's no guarantee that my employer won't discriminate against me based on my decisions to not follow through with a medical procedure. For example, if I refuse to take a vaccine that's required by work, they can either force me to mask, force me to test, move me to a different department, away from public access. We've heard about several people that have been, worked with their customer base, and they've been moved to a back room where they no longer have face-to-face access with customer base. They're moved to the back room. So all of that, in our opinion, is discriminatory actions for refusing to take, a medical procedure. So we have this fantastic state law that says any person over the age of 18 can refuse medical treatment, but there's nothing with that statute that says that your employer cannot discriminate against you based on your medical decisions. So lobby told the legislature that this was an added, that Louisiana is well known for our, what's the word for it? Lack of tort reform, if you will, that we're very litigious people, I guess. And so this would be just an added layer of litigation against business owners.
But that's not really the case. You just want to amend the Constitution.
It's not really the case at all. It actually protects business owners because now, without this in place, an employee who is harmed because of their medical requirements can sue the business owner.
Currently, the way things are set up.
Yeah, currently. Yeah. We were offering protection not only for the employee, but for the employer. And LABI, Louisiana Association of Business and Industry, convinced them otherwise. So we've already envisioned this, though, going to the federal level. We really think that this, because the federal government is the entity that actually put these liability shields in place with the PrEP Act and also the NCVIA. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. The PrEP Act is the first one, the COVID vaccine.
Okay.
And then the other one that shields pharmaceutical manufacturers and pharmaceutical products is NCVIA, which is the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act, the 1986 Act.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with that one?
I am, but you can update the audience. I've been talking about this stuff for before the pandemic hit. I was telling people to, some funny things going on with this industry, right?
Oh yeah. Well, I've been doing this for quite a while too. Our organization, I hopped on board with the Louisiana team back in 2019, moved back to Louisiana in 2018, and I took a year off because I've been in advocacy in Georgia, where I used to live. Moved back to Louisiana, took a year off, and then I hopped back on with my friends here in Louisiana, and we incorporated Health Freedom Louisiana in the summer of 2019. So we've been doing this for quite a while. But back to NCVIA, the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act, passed in 1986, signed into law by Ronald Reagan. I think a hesitant Ronald Reagan. I don't think he wanted to sign this. He knew it was a bad law. But what it did was it shielded pharmaceutical companies from litigation for any injury or harm or death that may occur as a result of vaccination for any vaccine that's on the childhood schedule. So it's also applicable to adults who are vaccinated with any shot that's on the childhood schedule. So, for example, a flu shot that an adult would have and also a child would have that's on the schedule, it's indemnified. So the consumer cannot sue. So the usual procedure for both of those, PrEP has a different compensation program for injury than the NCVIA. The PrEP Act, a consumer has to go through what's called the Countermeasures Injury Compensation Program to get compensated. They have a year to file from the time of administration, right? You got to know that you're injured within a year. So, and then I think max payout is $337,000 in CICP through the Countermeasures Injury Compensation Program. Yeah, because that's all you'll ever have to pay, right? For any kind of injury. Right. We actually had a woman testify on behalf of this bill that just died. She testified in committee, and she's turned into a wonderful friend. Her name is Angelia DeSalle. She's from New Orleans. She was one of the first vaccine injuries that went viral. I'm sure you've probably seen video of her in the hospital room just shaking and trying to walk. So her injury occurred in January of 2021. And so she testified on behalf of our bill, and her out-of-pocket expenses in the last year and a half is over $150,000. Trying to heal herself, trying to find a physician capable of, offering some hope and some healing to her body, but she's still suffering from the ramifications of that shot a year and a half later. So $337,000 is the max payout through CICP, the Countermeasures Injury Compensation Program, and then through NCVIA, which is the Vaccine Injury Compensation Program. The max benefit for death is $250,000. You have to file for that within 2 years of death. And that amount has, of course, not changed since 1986. So, yeah. And so it's the same for an infant. If an infant dies following a vaccination, or an adult. So $250,000 max for death compensation. And then for pain and suffering, the max compensation is $250,000 as well through the ICP. And then from what I understand from hearing from people who have gone through the compensation program, they kind of nickel and dime you for everything. The number of pairs of shoes that are estimated that the individual will wear through their lifetime, the number of diapers, if they, never become potty trained or whatever, the number of diapers that they're estimated to use throughout their lifetime. And they nickel and dime you for everything, because you're basically suing the government for that money that we've been paying into that fund since 1986. So both horrible programs for the consumer.
Jill, you come off like a crazy conspiracy theorist there.
I am. I absolutely am. But I'm right about it.
Why do you believe that you're right?
Well, I know I'm right.
Okay. How do you know?
Lived experience. I've spoken to, and I know many people that have gone through the Vaccine Injury Compensation Program. Have a friend in Advocacy in Maryland whose daughter was the 13th girl that died after the Gardasil shot. So I've heard her experience going through the ICP. I've seen videos of people that have, shown videos of their children.
But surely these are rare cases, and that there's much more other people who haven't had any adverse reactions. So it's for the greater good. Oh,
yeah. Well, so much has been done in the name of the greater good, right?
Yeah.
Like every atrocity the last 2 years that we've just experienced happened because of the greater good. So the greater good, in my opinion, is just a means for torture and torment. I don't think the greater good is a valid argument. I think individual rights have to be respected. I hope you feel the same way. But
absolutely, I feel the same way.
Good. I'm so glad. But, one of the things that we have been arguing the last 2 years, and one of the great things about, I shouldn't say great things, I call them COVID silver linings, some of the opportunities that have arisen just because of COVID. Okay. Like so many people that I would not have known if not for COVID. Wonderful, fantastic people. One of them being Woody Jenkins, who at one point was the longest standing, I think he still is the longest serving member in the Louisiana House of Representatives. And I've had the pleasure of meeting him and becoming friends with him. And I joke that I could quote him before I ever knew him, but he was one of the drafters of our Declaration of Rights that was rewritten in 1974.
Okay.
And so having had 2 years to kind of sit back and enjoy confinement and quarantine, I've had the opportunity to read our Declaration of Rights and our state's constitution, which I recommend everybody reading their state's constitution in addition to our federal constitution. But it starts off with Article 1, Section 1, which defines the origin and purpose of government. And in Louisiana, the origin and purpose of government is to protect the rights of the individual for the betterment of the whole. And so what we've experienced in the last 2 years is the government working for that greater good, the betterment of the whole, but it can only be done at the expense of the rights of the individual. So we've seen what it's like when the government kind of works in reverse of what it's supposed to. So I'm a huge fan of the rights of the individual. And so I think the greater good argument, which has been played out, especially here in Louisiana, our governor has used the be a good neighbor. That's his mantra. Which kind of perverts scripture too, in my humble opinion. But he's used that greater good argument for the last 2 years. Wear a mask, be a good neighbor, take the vaccine, be a good neighbor, don't complain, be a good neighbor. So anyway,
well, when I hear that piece of the Constitution, that you recited, I don't hear protection of an individual. I hear a clause with an amendment.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I hear, we'll protect individuals for the greater good. So which one takes priority?
Yeah. Well, the way I read it is protect the rights of the individual, and it will result in the betterment of the whole.
Right. That's how you would interpret it.
That's not the way our legislators interpret it. I think they're taking your interpretation. Oh my gosh, I need to do a better job of explaining that then.
They're slick when they write these things.
Yeah.
Because even Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution has been argued over, and I talk about this all the time, has been argued over, and it comes down to interpretation. Right. So say that piece of the Constitution one more time. I'm trying to see how it couldn't be misconstrued.
Okay. So the origin and purpose of government, it defines the origin and purpose is to protect the rights of the individual for the betterment of the whole.
For the betterment of the whole. Now, I would interpret it how you did. I would personally. For the betterment of the whole. But I also hear the loophole. I hear Bolsheviks saying, we can definitely finagle this thing. Yeah.
Use that. Yeah. Twist it. demons, should I say it that way? Demons can twist anything.
Demons. Yes. Call them demons. Yes.
Yes.
That's what they are. You put in a FOIA request or something like that?
For which one?
You put in a bunch.
Well, we've done several over the last couple of years. So
one of them, you said you sent out the request and he sent you back a link on how to use the mask.
Oh, yes. So that was actually to the CDC.
Okay.
Because my original public records request here in Louisiana, because the Louisiana Department of Health was recommending, back up just a little bit. Okay, so Louisiana Department of Health was recommending guidance to the Louisiana Department of Education. And part of their guidance said, in the actual meeting, the gentleman's name is Dr. Joseph Cantor. Dr. Cantor stated that all of their recommendations to the Louisiana Department of Education through Bessie is the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education. He stated that all of their recommendations were based on evidence-based data, right? He stated that. He used that phrase in the committee meeting, evidence-based data. And this was back in July of 2020.
Okay.
And so I knew that was not true. Before you ask any question, you kind of have to know the answer, right? So we had been compiling studies in regards to masks since about April of 2020, when we kind of saw the way things were going. We started compiling studies. I mean, we have like a 10-page document on our website of studies. And there was one that we found, and it was published in December of 2019. And it was a company that was starting to manufacture. How convenient is this? December of 2019, a company was studying N95s for children. Okay.
Uh-oh.
So
sounds like somebody got some heads up notice.
Right. So December 2019, this company publishes this study for their N95s that they're making. And in the study, they say that there's no other study like this, that nobody's ever studied masks on children. We're like, let's keep her. We need to hang on to this. And even in their study for their N95s that they were manufacturing, they only had the mask on children for like less than a minute. So there's like no long-term studies out in the universe out there, because here's this N95 manufacturer saying there's no studies on the market, and theirs is the first. And even in their study, the children didn't wear masks for very long. So here we go, fast forward to July of 2020, and Dr. Joseph Cantor, I think he's the state's public health officer is his official title, if I'm not mistaken, makes this statement in front of Bessie. Now, when you make a statement in front of any kind of legislative body, Bessie was created by the legislature to kind of inform policies of the Louisiana Department of Education. When you're making a statement like that in front of the legislative body, it's basically like you're under oath. Like if you say anything that's untrue, it's
perjury.
Exactly, right? So he made this statement that all of their recommendations were based on evidence-based data. Now, the day prior to this meeting in July of 2020, we sent a letter to Bessie saying we wanted evidence of all of their evidence of safety of all of their mitigation efforts that they were fixing. Oh, that's so Southern.
I love it. Say it. Fixing. They was fixing these demons fitting us. Fixing.
Right. So they were fixing to implement these things. So we said, you know what? We want the evidence. Show us the data. Show us the data that what you're fixing to implement is safe. And we were asking, show us that masking children 7 to 8 hours a day was safe, not only for their physical health, but for their mental health. Show us that it doesn't cause any kind of impairment of learning. Show us that, doing hand sanitizing chronically doesn't have any kind of health implications. Show us that social distancing doesn't have any kind of psychological harm on a child. So we sent them, I think it was like 14 pages. We sent them a 14-page, letter asking for evidence of safety of all the mitigation efforts that they were about to implement. And so the next day, here comes Dr. Cantor. And I think he either read our letter. I can't remember if we sent him our letter. Now, I know we sent it to all the members of Bessie. So, anyway, so he made this statement. They, of course, passed all, Bessie voted for everything that they recommended, but he made this statement in the committee. And I thought, if he's going to say that, he's got to have something to back it up. So I did a public records request, and I said, and I quoted him verbatim. Sorry, my dogs need some attention, but,
it's all good.
But yeah, so I quoted him verbatim, and I said, show me I want all the supporting material to support his statement that everything that they were recommending was evidence-based. And also I knew at the time that social distancing was based on a model, and you only use a model when you don't have any real life data, right? So there was no data, no evidence-based data on social distancing. We knew from that December study that there was no long-term safety studies on children wearing masks, 7 to 8 hours a day. Nobody's had time to do it. They still haven't done it. In the 2.5 years that all of this has gone down, they still haven't done any random control trials on children wearing masks, the health ramifications and stuff. There's a lot of empirical type data that they're interpreting, but there's been no RCTs on any of that. So I sent a public records request to the Louisiana Department of Health asking for all of the supporting material for that. Got nothing. Well, I take that back. They sent me like 43 links of various articles, nothing in particular on the safety of masks. It was all transmission studies, transmission of, I think they had the beautician study, the 2 women that, did hair, the airplane study. They also included one interesting study I call it the Ireland study. It was published in May of 2020, and it actually showed that schools that were opened in Ireland that still had band and choir, 2 really dangerous activities for children. And there was no transmission in the schools, maskless. All of this was done maskless, and there was still no transmission in school. So they sent me about 43 links, including that Ireland study, but nothing basically on the safety of masks. And so I kind of corresponded a little bit with the person that was filling my public records request. And I was like, where's the meat? Where's the data? And he was like, basically this is it. So when I couldn't find anything from them, I did get a reply from the executive council from the Louisiana Department of Education. And basically she said, my question is best asked of the CDC. So that was my next public records request, was the CDC. In August of 2020, I sent them a request and said, I want all of your RCTs, your random control trials of children wearing masks, for example, for 2 hours a day, 4 hours a day, 6 hours a day, 8 hours a day. And also I'd like any kind of random control trials of pregnant women wearing masks for 7 to 8 hours a day. And that's when about a month or so later, that was fulfilled. And I got a link to the CDC website showing how to properly wear a mask. Oh, and how to cut one out of cloth and wear it. But no safety data. That was straight from the CDC. They had no studies on the safety of children wearing masks, pregnant women, which was a huge concern for me because that's not just one person wearing a mask. That's a mother and an unborn baby. wearing a mask? What are the health ramifications of that? And they couldn't offer me anything on that, just how to properly wear one.
It sounds like it got kicked down. Like your request went up to somebody and got kicked down to some hourly wage employee, and they're like, I'll just send them these links and
send her a link.
Yeah. She's not going to check this anyway.
Yeah. No. So that's what it's been very frustrating. Our health agencies that are charged with our health, basically our safety, have failed dramatically over the last 2.5 years.
To say the least.
Yeah.
I saw a clip of you on YouTube, and you were in a hearing, and the second gentleman in that clip didn't give you quite time to respond.
Which one was that? Oh, was that? Oh,
it was not Crowley. What? Not Crom.
Chris Turner, Representative Chris Turner.
Yeah. That guy. Yeah.
I called out their votes, and
he
didn't like it. He didn't like it. He's the vice chair of our House Health and Welfare, but he's also my state representative. And so, I have his cell number, and I've asked him on every vote, pretty much until I've just basically given up the last couple of years. But I still send him a correspondence saying, I hope you vote in our favor or something like that. But I don't think he's ever voted for us, except for one time, but it was a lot of public pressure. But yeah, he's vice chair of health and welfare, where we say things go to die. That's where all of our bills go to die, is the House Health and Welfare Committee. But back in October of 2020, our state had its second special session, extraordinary session or something like that, except it wasn't extraordinary. It was awful. But we introduced 2 bills that session. One, to prohibit a COVID vaccine mandate, and that if an employer was going to require COVID, now this was before any vaccines made it to the market. Think about it. It's October 2020. They didn't come on the market until December of 2020. But we'd already been looking at all of the studies, all the articles, seeing the stories about the trial participants, having shakes so uncontrollably that one gentleman broke his tooth from shivering from a fever. I mean, we were keeping track of all of that. And so we introduced this bill in October of 2020 that prohibited a mandate. But if, a vaccine that came on the market and an employer wanted to require it, it had to have had a long-term safety study, undergone studies on its carcinogenic or mutagenic effect, had to have had, I can't remember, it was like 9 different criteria that the drug had. None of them had fit the bill. To date, none of them fit the bill. But it required all of that. And so he voted against that. We also had a piece of legislation that would require schools to inform parents and students of that fabulous exemption law that I was telling you about earlier. I mean, it's a great law, but schools are not required to tell students about it. So he voted against that. And he voted against several other things. In legislative session in 2021, we had a bodily autonomy bill. Fantastic piece of legislation, basically put limitations on the government, saying the government could not force any kind of medical intervention on an individual. He voted against that. So I got up at one of the committee hearings. I can't remember. I've done so many. I've testified in so many. I can't remember exactly which bill it was.
This was, I want to say 20. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's no worries. But basically all I did was read out everybody's vote, so the public would know how these people were voting on all of the issues. And he got extremely upset with me for calling him out on that. And actually texted me and told me to meet him out in the hallway. And so I did. I stepped outside And I said, well, if you don't like hearing your vote, you need to change your vote.
Right.
If you're feeling that much guilt over the way you're voting. And he was like, who introduced those bills? And so when I mentioned the name, he was just like, oh, see, our legislature is like the worst high school clique. If they don't like you, doesn't matter how great the bill is, who it defends.
Yeah.
They're going to vote against it.
Yeah, it's politics.
Much so. Very much so.
It says here, Health Freedom Louisiana, Jill Dillingham Hines speaks.
Yes.
Louisiana Legislature, Health and Welfare. This is August 16th, 2021. The co-director of Health Freedom Louisiana. That's the one you were describing there?
I believe so, yeah.
This guy was rude.
He was. Very much so.
He said, this is a statement. It's not a question.
Yep.
And you're like, well,
and
can I...
He wouldn't let me reply back.
Yeah, you were going to respond. He's like, no, there's no need for a response. I was just like,
no need to No. They're very, very, they can be very, very rude. I had another gentleman on health and welfare. Our third favorite bill out of the 50 plus that we had this year was a bill that prohibited the state or any state agency from marketing directly to a minor a drug, like a pharmaceutical, medical intervention, or medical product, I think is the way it was. And when I shared that the New Orleans Public Library, I had some internal emails from the New Orleans Public Library and how certain librarians were looking for teenagers to be what's called Vax ambassadors in the state. And they were looking, for teenagers, not their parents or anything. They were looking for teens to be Vax ambassadors. And I showed those internal emails, and I had them in documents in packets for the committee members. And one Representative Jason Hughes got extremely angry at me for doing that, for sharing that. And he actually took the opportunity in committee to thank the New Orleans librarians for protecting these teens, and just shoved his microphone like he's done with me and the conversation. Yeah.
That doesn't sound like these are the demons you were talking about.
Yeah, they're possessed. I don't understand the rationale. If I was a parent and I knew an adult was targeting my children for, this is just a slippery slope. If they're going to do it for this, they can do it for anything. So, it was a little tense, but I'm trying to break down those barriers. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
So what Chad wanted me to express was the fight. People think, the pandemic's behind us, the mandates are behind us, and this fight is over. And it seems like this fight has just begun.
Oh, yeah. No doubt. No doubt.
So we want to dive into the details of this fight on the ground that you're involved in, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a lot of work, local work. My question is, you keep talking about these bills.
Yeah.
How do you get a bill drafted?
There's various ways. It takes relationships, first of all. You have to have a legislator to carry a bill, right? To find the wording of a bill, like I've written one of them. The direct marketing to minors, I looked in other states' parental rights bills. Florida has a fantastic parental rights bill that they just passed. And I thought, well, surely they have something in there about talking to minors about medical interventions and stuff, because, of the issues with the gender identity and the gender hormonal replacements, the surgeries that they're talking about, top surgeries and stuff like that. And we actually had a lot of support from our educational advocacy groups too, in regards to that direct marketing bill. But anyway, I went to Florida's parental rights bill to look for some language. And I found something that was almost what I wanted. So I took that and I tweaked it a little bit and turned it into medical procedures instead of like curriculum. I can't remember exactly what theirs was approaching. So you can take other states' legislation and make it your own. The no liability, no mandate bill, our favorite one, our outside layer, the onion that I was telling you about. I reached out to state leaders. We have a network of health freedom groups across the country, and we have a little chat group. So I put a message in there. I said, this is what I'm looking for. I said, we've got protections in place for this and this and this, but I want to go after the product. Does anybody have any language where they target the product itself? And I got a text about 3 minutes later from my counterpart in South Carolina. And she sent me a draft of a bill that a chiropractor had written in South Carolina, but she'd gotten the idea from Connecticut. So, I mean, you get ideas from all over the place, but one of the best is to look at, see what other states are doing. My favorite is to go to Florida because, I mean, what's not to love about Florida right now, except for property prices?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's gotten out of hand.
Yeah.
I got a buddy here texting and asking, where can you find and read these bills?
Our bills?
Your bills, or like you said, you were looking at other legislation in other states.
Sure.
Where are you going to find this stuff?
Sure. For the bills that we had, like the ones that we were tracking this year, you can go to our website, healthfreedomla.org. And I think it's under Action Center. We have all of our calls to action. And right below that, we have a little tab that says bills. So you can click on that and you can see all the legislation that we were tracking this year. The legislative website for Louisiana is legis.la.gov. And that's basically the way you look for other states. You go to their legislative website. You can do a search for keywords. I also have access to a service called Bill Track 50. So I can look at all 50 states, put in keywords and pull up some legislation. We work closely. We're like the local group, I guess, if you will, for another national organization called National Vaccine Information Center, or NVIC. And so I reach out to them often. Actually, one of their advocacy coordinators by the name of Dawn Richardson has drafted several of our bills that we've introduced. She wrote the driver's license bill that we carried. It passed last year. The governor vetoed it. This year it failed in Senate committee, so it didn't pass. But
What's in
Dawn,
that one?
what's in that one?
Yeah.
That one basically just states that the state of Louisiana cannot. Okay, so 2019, Louisiana legislature, again, 2019, think about it, passed a bill that allows the state to track adult vaccinations.
Ooh.
Right? Yeah. Like this is, I mean, if I was a conspiracy theorist, I would say, that's pretty handy. But so 2019, they passed the bill. So the state has every adult's vaccination information. So we introduced legislation last year that would prohibit the state from putting that information on your driver's license or any kind of state issued card, like the physical card, not a digital passport or anything like that. We didn't touch an app. It's just the physical card because, you're going to use that card to, buy an airplane ticket or to rent a car or to get a marriage license. I mean, you use your driver's license for everything. Yeah. So we didn't want any kind of vaccination information on the physical card itself. And last year, of course, it passed. It was a hugely popular bill last year. And the governor, of course, vetoed it. So we introduced it again this year. And this year it died in Senate committee. It didn't even make it through all the layers of the legislative process.
Because of the demons, of course.
Yeah, very disappointing. Very, very disappointing. And that one, it actually died at the hand of Republicans. Most of our stuff dies at the hands of Democrats. And that one died with a majority Republican on that committee. Very disappointing. Very disappointing. But we knew going into this legislative session because our governor has an extreme ideology when it comes to vaccinations. I mean, you wouldn't believe some of the stuff that they've done through our Department of Health. And as far as like, we had a lottery system, which in my opinion is extremely unethical. They included minors in it. A minor even won, I think, $100,000, 14-year-old won $100,000. They were giving away scholarships to get vaccinated. They had a program called Shots for Santa. So all of this is done under his headship of the Louisiana Department of Health. He and his wife started a vaccination campaign back in 2018 called Vaccinate Before You Graduate, to make sure everybody's up to date, before they graduate. So we knew going into, this is what we're up against, right? So we knew going into the legislative session that if we were able to pass anything, that the governor was more than likely going to veto it, unless, of course, we could get our legislature into a special veto session. Last year, they did a veto session that was wildly unsuccessful. Nothing passed in the veto session last year. I think he vetoed 28 bills, and none of them made it out of the veto set. We have an extremely dysfunctional legislature. Extremely dysfunctional. So we're not only battling our governor, we're battling our speaker and the House and our Senate president. So so what we're looking forward to is having a voting record this legislative session.
What do you mean?
So the bills that we did propose, who voted for them and who didn't vote for them.
Oh, they hadn't given you that information previously?
Oh yeah, you always get it, but this year we knew that was what we were going to gain out of this legislative session, because we have a statewide election. So
you can see who's down and who's not.
Right. Absolutely. Who can we support in the next statewide election? Who do we not want to support?
Yeah. Interesting. So you said there was difficulty engaging Democrats on the idea of medical discrimination. Yes. And it's so strange. Like, we've actually been criticized for using the word discrimination or stating that, employment policies were discriminatory, or, what great examples, what happened in New Orleans. New Orleans implemented a COVID vaccine passport. They denied entry. They denied access to, sporting events, grocery stores. They required their businesses to do it, not just the public entities like government facilities and whatnot, but they required it of private entities as well. And so to us, that's very discriminatory. If you're segregating people, you're saying they can't come in because of their physical condition. That's another protection in our state's Declaration of Rights, is that you cannot discriminate against an individual. The government cannot anyway, based on an individual's physical condition. And what's more inherent of their physical condition than their immune status, how they were born. We wouldn't discriminate against anybody else based on the way they were born, right? So we've been criticized for using the word discriminatory or segregation in regards to these vaccine policies. And some of our harshest critics are the Democrats. Representative Jason Hughes, that I was telling you about, not a fan of mine. He does not like me trying to break down those bridges, but it's not been easy. And interestingly, the committee that I was telling you about earlier, House Health and Welfare, where all of our bills go to die, one of the members there, Representative Cox, who was not a fan of ours to begin with, was actually vaccine injured. He experienced Guillain-Barré after COVID vaccination. And I actually have not seen him in the last several months. Like, he hasn't participated. Maybe he did at the very beginning of the legislative session, but I have not seen him in weeks. And we've been in front of Health and Welfare quite often. So he's out. He's back. He's actually out of the session. Well, you said the Democrats have been giving you pushback on the use of the term discrimination. What are some arguments they're making? What grounds do they have to stand on to say that you're wrong for using this term? Because obviously they want to have a monopoly of this term and say it can only be
Right.
used in terms in regards to Black people, right?
Right.
Or some
Exactly.
other minority group.
Exactly. And that's exactly what it is. There's we call them our fan club, but our our fan club that comes to testify in opposition of all of our bills. There's this one beautiful Black girl that comes almost every time, and she's one of the ones that has been extremely offended at our use of discrimination.
They sent a
And
Black girl down there to do it.
yeah, I
That
have to
sounds
find
about
the
Democrat.
I'll have to find the video of it. And but my one of my co-directors is Hispanic, so she's more capable of making that argument than I am. I mean, they would
So it's a
crucify me.
battle. It's a battle of the minorities.
Right. Let's go intersectionality here. Let's see who's been screaming. But anyway, yeah. So our state is really hypersensitive on the race issue. Last year, in particular, it was, and of course, with the whole Ronald Green issue that's going on in our state. I'm not sure if you're familiar with all of that. See, that it just amazes me. So Ronald Green was a man who died at the end of a car chase with the Louisiana State Police.
Mm-hmm.
And I have watched the video. I try not to cast judgment. I mean, but I have, because you can see what's on a video. I don't know what's going on outside of the video. But from what I saw, it was a really horrific end to this man's life. And the people that I saw causing it on the video were the state troopers that ended the car chase. And it happened in, if I'm not mistaken, May of 2019. We were again in the middle of a statewide election. The governor, our Democrat governor, was informed of this gentleman's death, and that it ended in I think the text message from the state chief, the police chief, was a violent death. And it never made the news. Like, it finally hit, like, I became aware of it maybe in the last 6-7 months or so. And it happened up here in North Louisiana.
Name?
Ronald Green. The last name is spelled Greene. And so there's lots of pull up AP articles, Associated Press articles with John Bell Edwards, our governor, Ronald Green. There's
deadly arrest of Ronald Green by Louisiana State Police.
Mm-hmm. So all of this
up on the screen now. We can watch it while you're talking.
Yeah, the videos are awful.
Yeah, this doesn't look good at all.
No.
We got it up here.
Yeah. So there's been implications of him knowing about that, intentionally subverting the information because of the governor's race. Because, I mean, he was in charge when all of this was happening and never did anything to rein in if there was any kind of issues going on at the state police. It was under his watch. So anyway, so all of that has, where was I going with that, Brian? I'm sorry.
I don't know. I'm over here watching Ronald Green get his, I know. This is a black man.
It's a black man, white state troopers.
Right,
and nobody knows about this. This was the summer before George Floyd.
But you figured Democrats would hop all over this one. Why didn't they choose this one?
I know. And so they have, from what I understand, they had one meeting with the governor when this hit the news back in, when did it hit the news? Maybe January of this year? I can't remember. We've had so much going on in the state, but it's only fairly recently that it's, made statewide headlines because of the fact that I think somebody did a FOIA request of the governor's text messages, found out that he was sent a text message the night of or the day of Mr. Green's death, letting him know that it was a violent end. And he sat on the information. Mm-hmm. So even with him having done that, the Democrats in our state are not breaking ranks. They're staying in lockstep with him, with the whole Democrat agenda. Again, last year was like race was a hot button issue because of the CRT bills and legislation that we're going through. The gentleman that sat on the education committee was removed as the chair because of a comment he made when he took a CRT bill. He made a offhand comment, because I was in the room when all of this happened. We were waiting for one of our bills to be heard. And 5 hours later, I mean, they discussed this bill for 5 hours, but he made the offhand comment that he wanted the good, the bad, and the ugly of slavery to be discussed in, classroom setting. And somebody heard good when he said the good, the bad, and the ugly. And the next thing we know, it's on CNN. And, he's a racist and all this kind of stuff. So race is a hot topic down here, and you're on pins and needles, So when I, use the word discrimination or segregation in terms of vaccination and how people are treated, it just, I don't know. It's like, why can I not empathize or sympathize with individuals who literally are being discriminated against? But my counterpart, my other co-director, Fiorella, of course, Hispanic, and she can say things that I cannot in this.
So what they sent? So they sent a little black girl down. What did they send a little black girl down to say? What arguments is she presenting? She's probably very fiery, very emotional, and into it.
Yes. I'll have to find the video of it. But she actually helped in the vaccination campaign. So she's sold into the program, if you will. She's part of the Power Coalition, which is a local, I guess, a statewide organization that worked with Louisiana Department of Health going into communities to help with vaccination campaigns. So she's really, really into all of this. So when we made comments about New Orleans and their vaccine passport program, she did not take kindly to it. Yeah. I'll have to find the video of that for you.
Yeah, I would love to see that video. All right. Yeah. So now we've got the bill drawn up. We're ready to submit it. How do you market this bill after you've created one or have one drafted? Because you got some funny names to some of these bills.
Do we really?
Well, they're interesting. Like the one bill was no this, no that. What was it called?
Oh yeah, that's our outside layer of the onion. That's the no liability, no mandate bill.
Right.
That's the one that died today. Yeah. So
so like when I think about a name like that, right? I go, oh, I wouldn't use that name, right?
What would you use?
Something more discreet.
Oh, see, we actually changed it because initially it was an indemnified product act. Now, who knows what indemnified is? Now we know, and this is, I think this is anywhere, but you have to kind of dumb down your language to get it down. Yeah, right. Yeah. So who knows what indemnified is? But people tend to understand liability free. So we went with that direction instead of an indemnified product. So we actually did work on our marketing just a tad bit. I had a phrase, I had it as a question, and people were like, I gave it to my little core group that I work with. We called ourselves the movers and shakers. Letting you in on a little secret just between me and you. So my friends and the movers and shakers, I put it in there and they're like, what does that mean? And everybody was so confused. I thought, okay, well, I need to work on that, obviously, just a little bit. But we're basically our own marketing department. My Fiorella, my counterpart, we have another kind of a silent partner. Her name is Ashley, who went back to work full time at the beginning of the pandemic. So she's been working full time while we work full time on all this. So we're our own marketing department. We create our own graphics. We do have an advocacy tool that we purchased through donations to an organization called Voter Voice that allows us to have, people sign up for our messages and our emails and our text blasts and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, we do it all ourselves. One of
like one of the ideas I have now is, if I was to name it, it would be like Freedom of Black People Act, right?
Okay, we'll go with that next time.
Right? You put that in the house, right?
And then, why didn't I ask you first?
You should have called me. This is what I do. And then you put that in, right?
Yeah.
And then they vote that down. You go, look, 20 Democrats just voted against the Freedom of Black People Act. Who are these people?
Why didn't I think of that? I'm really kicking myself now, Brian. I'm not kidding. I need to get out of my white mindset and think, because that's been one of our problems. Like, we really want to get in. We want to communicate better with the Black population here, the Black community here in Louisiana. And I don't know what, I can't force people in. I can't force them to understand this. We've tried sharing, Robert Kennedy Jr. put out a great documentary about a year and a half ago on the racism within the medical history and the racism in the medical. So we tried to share that. We got censored. We got put in jail for sharing that kind of stuff. So, but one of the things that I would really love is to be able to communicate our message better to the Black community, so that they understand that we're friends and not foes, that we're not advocating for, harm to them in any way by denying them this product. And that's one of the things that we've been accused of too, is denying access to vaccinations with our legislation. And I'm like, look, you can get vaccinated on every street corner. Nobody's denying access to vaccinations.
Right.
We just want it to be done in an ethical manner with informed consent, without, any kind of discriminatory actions for people that, decide against it. Because let's face it, it's a crap product. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't prevent transmission or infection. And that's one of the things that we heard today from one of the senators on the committee that we were in front of this morning. Her husband passed away from COVID, I believe in December of 2020, right before vaccines became available. And so she was, arguing for, if our legislation went into effect, she wouldn't feel comfortable going into a large setting, knowing that there were unvaccinated people along with vaccinated people. And we're just like, has nobody told this woman that the vaccines don't work? They don't do that. They don't work that way.
Be careful, we're on YouTube now. Hold on, now you can't say that.
Sorry. Sorry.
Lord have mercy, Jill. Oh my God.
I'm gonna get you banned. I'm so sorry.
You worse than damn Robert Kennedy. Woo.
Oh, by the way, he's amazing. He came down to our state in December and went to war against Louisiana Department of Health. It was nice. It was great. That's a hearing you want to watch. That's good.
Yeah, I'm about to check that out.
Yeah, it's good.
All right, so we've marketed this thing, and I think as we start to round home here, I want to make sure people have a clear idea of what they need to look out for in the neighborhood, and what organizations they need to connect with, because what I always tell people is a lot of our solutions are based around organization. You started the organization. What's the name of it? Health Freedom
Louisiana.
Yeah. So start organizations like that, or joining organizations that are already up.
Yeah.
And I guess check in, see if there are bills on the table with these certain keywords, fighting against them and getting your own legislation tossed up, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, we're at the end of our legislative session. The last day is June 6th. So we've got a few more hurdles to jump before that. We only have probably a handful of bills still in play. Of the 50 plus that we had in play at the beginning of the legislative session, I'm guessing about 10 may make it if, maybe more like 5 may make it to the finish line, and whether or not the governor signs them. There's one that we're holding out hope that he will sign, and we'll consider the session a win despite having lost better than 50 bills. But there's one bill in particular, I think I mentioned it earlier, that would require schools to inform parents and students of their right to dissent of any kind of vaccination to attend school. So we're hopeful that one will pass and will be signed into law, because the one of the reasons that the governor is so willing to mandate or require COVID vaccinations is because of our fantastic exemption law. He says, oh, anybody can dissent, anybody can do away, but nobody knows about it. Nobody knows about it. The state is not required to tell people about it. So we're really hopeful, because I've tagged him on post in particular where he's bragging about what he calls our liberal vaccination policy. I'm like, well, we look forward to the day when he signs the legislation and informs everybody about it. So we'll see if he does it or not.
Shout out to Charlie Moyne, our only super chat tonight. He said, God bless the malls. They've been fighting this foolishness for decades. Yes, they have, man. Yes, they have. I guess we should have people follow up with you. Is there a call to action for people to support what you're doing, and how?
Yeah. Again, on our website, healthfreedomla.org, there's an action center. You can see all of the bills. I think I shared one today for HB 54, which is an anti-discrimination bill that limits the government. That one's passed committee. We're fixing to put out a call to action for another one, that one I mentioned that would require schools to inform parents. It's fixing to go to the Senate floor for a vote. 1022, of course, died today. We've got several others in play, but they should be on our action center. So follow us there. They can download the app for Voter Voice and get all of our call to actions. And then, of course, follow us on our social media. We're extremely censored, so you have to really look for us. We're Health Freedom Louisiana on just about everything: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. It's where I found you.
Yeah, I'm following back now. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that. Well, it was so funny. I met Chad for the first time last week. He came to the Capitol to testify for 1022 when it was in committee, and we were having dinner. And he goes, "I know this guy," and he mentioned your name, and I was just like, I follow him. Pulled out my Twitter account. I was like, I follow him.
Hey, that's dope.
But I have to make a confession.
Okay.
I know nothing about Bitcoin.
Nothing about Bitcoin.
Nothing. But one day, when the government stops violating our rights and I have a few, spare moments, I will listen to your stuff about Bitcoin.
Okay. I love it. I think right now you just have to convince yourself that it's digital gold.
Okay.
That's the safest way to think about it.
Okay.
And buy a little bit. Buy like $10 a week.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's manageable.
Yeah.
Small little bites, right?
Yeah, little bites. Yeah.
Little bites.
Yeah, little bites. You can get it on a Cash App. The Cash App app.
Oh.
You know Cash App?
Nope.
Yeah, you download Cash App and go get you some Bitcoin.
Look, I tell you, the government, as soon as they stop infringing on our rights, I'll have a little bit of free time.
I love that you're so dedicated that you don't have time to know about Bitcoin, because that means you're doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Yes. Hyper focused on health freedom.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. Chad Lemoyne said the everybody against this bill hates children bill.
Love it. You guys are our new marketing department.
Jay Podlon said, thank you for questioning the narrative and showing us your courage. Amazing. So lots of warm messages from the audience, and the chat's been loving you.
Good.
Shout out Dane Digital. He supported the channel on Cash App. Appreciate you, bro. Jill, I'm here. If you ever need somebody to boost your signal about something, let me know.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Brian.
Oh yeah. So everybody, make sure you follow her. Links in the description box below, and I'll holler at you soon. Jill, hang on for a second there.
Okay.